production, the past, present, and future. My name is Teresa Cirillo. I'm your host in this room this fine day. I have no clue what it's doing outside, but I really don't care because it is awesome in here. This panel will discuss if and how music production has changed with technology and the many different roles of the producer today, which can include mixer, engineer, artist rep, and in some cases, record labels. It is more important the artist have pure talent, or is it more important to have an artist that has pure talent or a strong work ethic? How do you mentor and how important is it? What is the effect of the studio environment for overall production? Are music genres a thing of the past? And how does it affect the producer? What is a producer's role in remixing? That's a lot of information you guys are going to get today. And finally, is it a viable career? This panel will answer all of these questions and help you get your start in the art of music production. Please help me welcome, and when I say help me welcome, that means like 10 out of 10. From 91.7 Giant FM and Giant Media Services, your moderator, Shane Christopher Neal.
Does this mic work? Hello? Check 1, 2.
Check 1, oh, there we go. You know, this is exciting for me because I've been a host here at CMW for a few years. I'm a host this year, speaker, facilitator. I've been on the stage introducing other bands, so it was, thank you, Teresa, very awesome that someone would introduce me. So how many people were at the David Grohl thing yesterday? Okay, so notice this, that David had these exact same shoes and jeans, and he rocked the shit out of yesterday. So I felt if I would, kind of dress the same way, we'd get the same results. And we got a great panel. Come on up, let's bring the panel up right now, and we'll get to introduce them, or they'll introduce themselves. The key with radio and television is that you don't really need to know how to pronounce people's last names, such as Hills, because she will give it to you herself. All right, we got a lot of things to cover here today. We're going to go through it as quickly as possible, and we're going to start with the introductions. How about we go down the end there, and Andre, and introduce yourself and maybe a little bit about you.
Sure, hey everyone. My name is Andre Caden Black. I'm a record producer, songwriter out of Toronto. I've been in the industry for close to 20 years. I've written for many labels. I was in a writing team with the bassist of Our Lady Peace. We wrote for Sony ATV. I've worked in many studios across internationally. And I'm here. I'm really excited to help you guys learn some stuff today.
Yeah,
Hi,
you're next.
I'm Hill Kirkudis, and I am a producer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist from Toronto.
Hi, I'm Karen Kosowski. I'm a record producer, songwriter, originally born and raised in Winnipeg, lived in Toronto for a long time, and I recently relocated to Nashville a couple years ago. I work primarily with pop and country artists, Madeline Merlot, Tim Hicks, Brett Kissel, Emily, that sort of thing.
I'm Sylvia Massey. I'm a record producer from the US and engineer and author. I wrote a book called Recording Unhinged, and have worked with artists as Prince, Johnny Cash, Tool, System of a Down, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Tom Petty.
Well, so nobody really big.
That kind of thing.
She has awesome hats. Yeah. I'm Brian Mockars, music producer, mixer, engineer from here in Toronto. Primarily work with rock bands, Our Lady Peace, Tea Party, The Trues, sort of a rundown of my fame.
All right. I'm Jermaine Dupree. I'm the second hip-hop artist to be inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. So I guess I'm a songwriter and producer from the United States.
Oh, there's a lot more than that, but that's okay. That's good for a start. So let's talk a little bit about technology first. And we know that technology has changed how we consume music, but it's also changed how we produce music. A lot of times people say today music is a little less organic, a lot more loops, a lot more samples in that. Maybe we can dive into a little bit about how production has changed and if it's for the better or worse, especially because some of you have been doing this for a long time. And I'm going to ask Sylvia that first.
Yeah, you know, it's an exciting time for music production because you can take organic instruments and manipulate them to whatever you want, and they're like in entirely new sounds that can be discovered. And so you're not limited with, there's no limit actually with what you can do now. And you can help artists to create their ideas by using the studio tools, the computer programs to improve their performances. And so I think it's a very incredibly exciting time. I also really appreciate the musician who can pick up an instrument and play, and want to actually be able to document that too. I think it's an important skill to know as you're learning and developing your own skills as a producer.
Someone else want to jump in there?
Sure. I mean, the thing that I love about where production is headed is the fact that it's become so accessible to create from anywhere. So, you know, now I can essentially fit the majority of my studio into my backpack, go anywhere and cut a record, and I find that extremely exciting. So that's, I think, a perk of not being tied down to a board and a place.
You're looking at me like you want to say something, but you don't have to. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think personally, I love the organic nature of getting a band in a room, but I think it's important that the one consistent thing throughout maybe all of our technological advancements is a great song. Really, like I think
nothing beats a great song. Right?
Nothing beats a great song, and the technology will change, and the way we make those songs might change. But a great song is a great song that connects. So I'm cool to use any bit of technology that will help me make the song great.
I'm going to ask Jermaine this. So in the hip hop forum, and I ask this because I'm not a producer, I'm a radio TV host guy. So I'm like these people, I just kind of got questions that I want to know answers to. How have things changed in your world as far as producing? Because in hip hop, it was always about samples, right? In a big way. But how has that changed today from maybe 10 years ago?
Well, I was going to ask them a question first. How long has it, what's the question I wanted? In rock music, I guess because all of y'all just said that, the way music is being made now has changed the way y'all make music?
Oh, definitely.
How is that?
I think it has like more of an urban influence to the production because I'm actually,
Absolutely.
even if I record a drummer, in order for it to have a wide sonic scape, I'm layering it with subs now, you know. So yeah, I'm heavily influenced by that urban approach to production, for sure.
And the reason why I asked that is because I haven't, that question that you just asked them, I've been making records like a 4-track since 92. So I don't know nothing about like, oh, it's gotten smaller, you know. I never had an opportunity to go to a big studio until I became successful, right? I've been making records on small shit forever, so it's not like, the technology changed the way I started thinking. I heard y'all say that, so I just wanted to make sure from a distance, so just people out there in the audience understand from the way I make records, technology hadn't really touched. I mean, it didn't make me sway. And then sampling, I think, the only thing that has pushed samples away is probably the sound of that sound, you know, but still sampling is still, I mean, you know, every record that you hear is a sampled record. The 808s are being made with sample 808s, not the actual 808 drum machine. And, you know, these are all samples, basically. So it's like the whole radio that you hear, everything you hear on the radio is completely samples now. It's not, prior to that, it wasn't like that. People used to make their own snares and try to create snares and, you know, hit a snare and actually
Like Sylvia.
stack a snare and do something else. But now it's like people just like They just using stock sounds that's in these drum machines or these things that's coming. So
And even if you are creating those organic snares, you're still layering them samples anyway.
To make new samples.
Exactly.
So
it's just what I'm saying. It's like it's all samples. You know, it's just the actual taking 8 bars of someone previously recorded music. That's not so much because of the sound. It doesn't have anything to do with technology. It has something to do with just the sound of hip hop changing. Not to say that that's not going to come back though.
Great answer. Let's talk about a little bit about the roles of the producer now. So, Brian, you're a producer mixer. That's what you do. Karen, you do some songwriting. By the way, great Tim Hicks song. We'll talk about that. Same with Hill. And so how has for anybody? How many people are producers here or want to be producers? Okay, so there's a lot. Like, how has that role maybe changed over the years? Because today I talk to producers and they're like an artist rep and they're a fucking therapist and they're it goes on and on. Like they're doing more than just maybe not you because you're in a little bit of a different space, but for a lot of people you're doing a lot more, right? So you have to kind of be the record label sometimes or the manager. And so what are the roles of the producer? Has it changed? Because I think it's changed.
I guess in my career path, I went from being more of the traditional producer, then migrating to a mixer, and I think that the time I spent as a producer has really helped because I would say that I wouldn't call what I do mixing per se. I'd say like I'm like a closer, like in a baseball game when when you're sort of like you're up by a couple runs and you bring the closer in. I kind of feel like that's the role that I have now because not only am I mixing, but bands are asking me to rearrange songs in the mix process, and they're asking me to layer in new sounds and do different things. And a lot of the production is actually coming together in the mix these days, and I feel like I'm able to be successful at it because of my experience of like 15 years of production and being in the trenches with bands in the studio. That helps me.
I want to get your opinion, Andre, because you work with Christy, who's here today. By the way, winner of the Jim Beam contest, wherever she is. Put your hands together. That's a big. Tonight at the Phoenix Concert Theater, the Indy, she'll be performing. But you work with her as a producer, but what are some of the other roles? I mean, I don't think you're her therapist. You might be, but.
You know what? I think the biggest thing for an artist nowadays is building a team of people. And I think that some artists aren't very good at business and some aren't good at certain things. So finding the right fit for the puzzle. I mean, myself, I'm pretty good with business and social media and marketing and stuff. So I try to get my hands dirty with the artists that I believe in, that are showing me that they can hustle as well. So if you're putting in your time, I'll gladly help and guide and get my hands dirty and behind an artist that I believe in, and because only good things can come from it, right? So I think developing a team or starting a team is a big deal nowadays because there's just so much to do as an artist, and to do it by yourself and to do it all right by yourself, it's really difficult. So.
And in the process of picking or choosing an artist to work with, Hill, you and I were talking that you kind of go through a dating period, right? So you want, because I guess my question earlier on, before we got here, was if I come to you and say I want you to mix a song or produce a song, you don't really know me and you might do it because maybe you get paid the money to do it, but the reality is you're not going to produce great content if you don't really have a good relationship, I think, with someone. And I know that relationship has to start somewhere, and that's maybe why you have the dating period. So I like your story.
Yeah, I like to do that because I feel like the recording process, the relationship between a producer and an artist is a very intimate relationship, and it's like you can't dive into this artist's heart and soul without getting to know them and understand them. And I think that in order for them to trust you as a producer, you have to build that trust. It doesn't just come after one meeting. So I really like to spend time with an artist. I want to make sure that they for sure 100% want to work with me, because if they trust me, then I'll be able to take them to those places where they need to go in order to get some authentic stuff. So yeah, I think it's important that it's a two-way street. You both have to trust each other.
And I find, like, for myself, it tends to take the path of writing with the artist, just because I also do a lot of songwriting. So from the path usually ends up being that we're just in a room, we're writing together, and because the world is as it is now, I might be building a bit of a track. I might even have a few things that I've thrown their way at the top of the session. They like that vibe. We start writing over that vibe. But I'm not the kind of producer. I hate to like turn my back to the room and just make track in the session, because I came from a traditional songwriting background. So if I have a great song, the demo or the track is going to be way better if I have something great to work with. So I do still want to be, like we get involved, we tear apart the song, we write the song, we're developing a bit of a sound at the same time and sort of discovering the artist's personality through that process. And then that is often what organically evolves. If we've done a few songs together, we sort of are finding a vibe where we realize that we connect, then that can build into a larger production relationship.
Well, I think the artist then becomes to trust you more when you give them the input to some changes you want to make into the song, right? So, I mean, you can speak to that, Sylvia.
Well, in the question about how's the role of producer has changed, how my role as producer has changed, most recently, I find myself being asked to come in to triage a session to get it finished. So it's a self-produced project, and they've been working on it for 6 months. There's 20 songs. They can't get their shit together, and so it's me sitting and going through all the tracks and making lists of, okay, you got to finish this, you got to rework this, and then giving them homework, and then ultimately meeting with them and finishing those tracks. One of my favorite quotes, and I hope I'm quoting it correctly, Steve Jobs said, "True artists ship." And that to me means true artists finish and release the product. They get something finished, and it becomes very, very difficult for people with the modern digital recording to actually know when something is finished. So my role seems to have changed to be that person to make those decisions of when something is done.
You want to add to that, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of just goes back full circle to what I guess I said.
Finish it.
That's ultimately it. I mean, most bands that I work with, every single member of that band has a home studio. So it's like, I'll be in the middle of a mix, then all of a sudden I'll check my inbox and there'll be like extra tracks that I need to add to the mix. And it's like, well, when is this done? But again, a great song is a great song. It doesn't matter how you dress it up. Like I always say to my artists, if you can feel comfortable going to a radio station with an acoustic guitar and playing this song, then it's a great song. We can dress it up many, many different ways. Springsteen with Atlantic City, what a great song that is. On Nebraska, it's totally stripped down 4-track in his room, but when he plays it with the E Street Band, it's this massive production, but both are great, because it's a great song.
We're going to move on a little bit here to some interesting things that, because there's a lot of producers or people who want to be producers here. Let's talk a little bit about stepping outside the box and some non-traditional ways to doing production. And I won't get to you first, because maybe I can ask Jermaine a question as well, but maybe some ways that some of these producers can think outside the box. And I mean, we learn how to do production many different ways. Some of us get mentored, some of us go to school. I don't do any of those, but is there anything that you can add to that as far as just, non-traditional things that you could pass on to anybody here?
Me?
Yeah, you.
It's a bunch of different ways. I mean, depending on the musician that's in you, that's, and being an intern. A lot of things that people don't want to do, I feel like, is the thing that people should do to become a better producer and understand. Like he just said, if it wasn't for him doing production for 15 years, he wouldn't know how to do what these people are asking him, right? I think you have to have that little piece in your repertoire, some kind of way. Something that you have to have done something that you didn't want to do that's going to come back, that you use later on in your life to become a great producer, songwriter. To me, that's what I believe. So one of these things that's out there that you don't want to do, with me it was like going to piano lessons. I hated that shit. Like for real, like I was like, I'm not going to piano lessons. I used to have to go to piano lessons and voice lessons every day. And the lady that was teaching me, she wanted to teach me Beethoven and all this shit that I didn't want to learn. And I'm like,
You look like you'd enjoy Beethoven.
I'm like,
No? I don't know.
I'm like, no, I don't want to learn this. And I bring tapes to the stuff that I wanted her to play. And she's like, I'm not teaching you how to play this. It's like this tug of war thing, but at the same time, what she taught me was chords. And when she taught me how to figure out my own chords, and she taught me how the chord progressions and how to play and how to listen to notes and different things. And this is the stuff that, like I said, at the time I hated the shit, but then it got to a space in my life where I was just like, I know this. How do I know this? I know that's wrong. I know that shit don't sound right. Like, immediately you start, you know what I mean? It's like things that you just pick up on. So I would just say whatever's out there that you don't want to do, you probably should be doing it.
And also, I mean, I had someone just a few days ago I was working with, they're like, oh, I love the sounds that are coming out of this, and what plugins are you using? And I'm like, well, I mean, yes, I'm using a really nice, it was a piano part I was playing and some drum stuff, and it's like, well, yeah, this is a great piano library, but it, you know, there's so much else that goes into that. Like, what's your touch like on the piano when you're playing it, you know? What are your voicings like? There's a reason why this is sounding like this, and it's not just a plugin. I mean, it's like you kind of have to look at all the aspects and learn as much as you can about theory and pick apart stuff that you like, because you're going to find your own sound and the thing that you can bring to it by picking apart stuff you like and you know, finding all the little ingredients that kind of absorb into you and then come out in what you are then building yourself. I think there's just no shortcut, you know? It's not like, well, I got this piano library or I got this great guitar, so I'm done, right?
You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just want to add to that because I think another really important thing is also to not lock yourself in a box and remember that, yes, production is technical, but it's also a super creative thing. And I think it's really important to observe who you're working with and see how you're going to best get, you know, the best performance out of them. And I worked on this one a cappella record once, and I did what you would normally do to, you know, get a performance. I stuck up a condenser mic and I'm like, okay, do your part. And it was just not working and I couldn't figure it out. So then I just went outside and stared at the guy. He was beatboxing. And I'm like, just beatbox how you would normally beatbox, like in the air. And I saw that he was moving and he was doing all this stuff. And then I like started putting my ears against his like neck because he started having these subby sounds coming out of his neck. And I said, okay, I can't put up a nice mic for this. I gotta like capture it and I gotta honor it. So I like went and rented a lav mic and I taped it to his neck. And, you know, I put up some room mics and I pretty much mic'd the guy like a drum kit. And that's when I got the performance I needed, and I also got the sounds that I needed in order to, you know, get my mix and give it some low end.
You're crazy shit.
That's it. I think you just can't think of things.
That's why your hair looks that way.
I know.
I know.
Hair goals.
So Sylvia, because you and I were chatting, I watched some interviews with you, and some amazing things you've done to get sounds and recording. And I talked to a few things, maybe some of them. Did you not drag a guitar around behind a van or something?
Yes.
Okay, you want to tell the story or?
Well, that was you know, geez.
You don't have to, but.
No, I tried to, excuse me, but, oh my God.
Put them on, maybe they can help us out. Who is it?
Okay, sorry about that. But anyway, oh my God, well, the unconventional idea of production is so much fun because you can just go nuts with it. It's like, depending on the artist and the willingness of the artist to do some experimenting, you can create sounds like Hill was talking about, you know, miking someone's throat, which is unusual. Or, you know, another thing is maybe asking a guitar player to play their instrument upside down and like do a solo now, see what that's going to be like, you know, or you know what I mean? Like, but also the idea of recording in unusual places, like the space that you record in is as important as the mics that you're using, let's say. The equipment that you're using, because that becomes an extension of the instrument like for instance, you can choose to record music with an organ sample, or you can go into a cathedral and mic up an
Do
organ.
you not work out of a church in Nashville or no?
What's that?
Do you not produce out of a church and record out of a church in Nashville?
I have a church in Oregon.
In Oregon, okay.
But it doesn't have a pipe organ. You know, I would like to get one day, but it's got plenty of other stuff. But imagine like, you know, well, let's say using the space for production. If you have a singer in a studio and they're in a small booth, a recording booth, and you're doing a vocal there, you're going to get a different performance than if you take that same singer and put them in a cathedral and put the same mic up and have them sing the same part. It's just the environment adds so much to the performance, and there's so many other things. Like Jermaine was talking about, just taking the idea of just taking a sample. It's so easy to just dial up an 808 sound, but why not create your own? It's the long way around to do it that way, and sometimes some people will say you're wasting time, but you're making a story with doing that too, and you never know how much better it's going to be, and then that will be something that someone else samples down the line, you know.
Still want to know about the guitar, but that's okay. Andre, anything to add to that, or?
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, nowadays everything's so in the box that we're doing, especially with artists pop being and hip hop being so relevant in the mainstream. But it's nice when we do organic stuff. I mean, I got the privilege to track out of Abbey Road Studios in London a couple years ago. I don't know if you worked out of there yet, anybody, but it's the size of the room and the way that it sounds is different, you know, because the walls it's so reflective and big, but when you look at the room, you wouldn't think that. So I think in the grand scheme of things, it's really important going to certain studios if you're focusing on a certain band that you want a certain sound. But at the end of the day, you know, a lot of those tracks are just going to end up back on the laptop, and then they're going to get doctored and cut up and stuff like that. So unless you're doing it a little bit old school, you know, like having an old school mentality, it all goes to the same place at the end of the day. And the good thing about what we were talking about earlier is that, you know, with the samples being as good as they are nowadays, you don't have to like go to Abbey Road. You don't have to go to these special studios to get the sound that you're going for on a budget, you know.
So it's interesting, I just got the 10-minute sign, so I've been doing this for days and nobody listens to me, so do I have to listen to that 10 minutes for real? I'm kidding, of course I'll abide by the rules. So mentorship, I want to get into this because I know, like Brian, Bob Ezrin, you worked under Bob Ezrin, right? Sylvia, Rick Rubin, which would have been amazing, and Andre under Gadget and that. So maybe it could be open to anybody, but speak about the importance of mentorship in this industry, because I know that it's meant a lot to some of you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would be where I am without. I've had two really great mentors in my life at different stages. Bob Ezrin first, I met very early on in my career, and I mean, the knowledge he imparted on me was just invaluable. And then that experience led me to engineering for another producer named David Bottrell, who we opened a studio together, and is probably one of my best friends to this day. You know, I worked with him only for a few years, but learned so much, and his production style is so different than mine. And I think it's all information gathering. You know, I think as a human being, we like to ingest. As humans, we like to ingest information, and I mean, there's some people out there that have made some amazing records that, you know, I adore and I've loved all my life, and I mean, it was an honor to get to work with such great people.
You want to talk about Rick, or I know that you, for Sylvia?
Oh yeah, the thing that I learned, the biggest lesson I learned from Rick was that it is much about the assembly of personnel that makes a project happen. So he would choose the right, you know, drummer, the right arranger, the right engineer, put them in the right studio, pick the songs, and then just kind of push them off and say, push them into the world and say, okay, write and record. And then he would come in and check. You know, he gets a lot of flack for not being around the sessions, but absolutely his production style, it has such an influence on how great these records are. It's because all the right things are happening and he's overseeing them. He comes in periodically, he listens to the work being done, he says, oh, you're gonna have to work on this part, and then he steps away again. It's because he's not micromanaging that it allows the magic to happen. And at the same time, when I worked with him on Johnny Cash, he was there every minute. He was there before I got there.
Johnny Cash.
I know. He respected Johnny so much, and it was a really special set of sessions because Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers was his backup band. So every day there was just magic in the studio, and Rick didn't want to miss a minute of it, you know. So I learned so much about just the assembly of the right people in the studio makes a huge difference.
We're going to get to questions and answers, but I have to ask Karen something. So, how many people know Tim Hicks? Tim Hicks? Okay, so what a song should do. We were talking about this. What a great, you know that song? What a song should do? What a great song. I wish I brought it, we could have played it. It's on my phone, but you'll never hear it. So, before we get to the Q&A, because I want to talk to you about this song, you helped write the song and work with Tim. Just give us the briefing of how that all kind of happened, because it's one of the best songs Tim has ever had.
Oh, thank you so much. That's really kind of you to say. It was actually the very first time I'd written with Tim, and it was myself, Tim, and my best friend and frequent co-writer, Emily, who also moved down to Nashville recently with me. And we got in a room and we were just talking, you know, you kind of shoot the shit for the first while, sometimes an hour or more, depending on the vibe and what you're talking about. And the topic came up of writing sessions and a trip that Emily and I had taken to LA a few years before, and we were writing a bunch of songs for her at the time. And we got in a room with another writer, and he said something to both of us that always stuck with me and her, and it was that a song should do one of two things. When you hear it, it should make you say, hell yeah, like, yeah, or that's me. And if you don't connect with a song like that, it's probably not going to become something that you go back to over and over and over again. And so we sort of, I always remember that, and I use it kind of also as a compass in terms of, you know, writing sessions, even producing. It doesn't matter how complicated the production is, how much we put into it. If you're not getting that feeling from it, then it's not going to work. It's not going to connect in the way you want. So we talked about that, and it resonated with all of us. And from a purely not technological, but the way the session went, I had a track that I had kind of worked up the night before, trying to think of. I knew kind of the direction he wanted to go, so I had a couple ideas, and we just started singing around the track, and it just kind of came together really fast. We actually wrote 2 songs that day, and it was just like one of those kind of magic days where everything connected and happened, and we all really love that song.
You gotta check it out if you haven't. Beautiful song. Okay, now we get to 5 minutes. So let's do some questions and answers. Is that cool? Do we have a microphone out there? Yeah, it's coming. And then we'll wrap it up with maybe some of the advice some of the producers here can give to you before we say goodbye, which is so sad. Is there a bar? Yeah, microphone. Do we have something? We have a question right over here.
Hi, yeah, my name is Juan. I have a question specifically for Sylvia, just about working with Tool and Maynard in general. We always hear these stories about Maynard in the studio and how he's like super creative but also wants to be a part of everything. What's it like as a producer working with an artist who's so like such a big part of the, I don't know how to word it exactly, but I think you understand what I mean. Like someone who's so into the creative aspect, so emotionally invested in something. How do you work with that as a producer?
Well, the biggest test in the studio for me was capturing what they do live, because having seen the band play for months before the recording, you know, Maynard on stage is like a troll, like he's like, raw, you know. So in the studio, it didn't make sense and it didn't work to set up a beautiful condenser mic, tube condenser mic. And we tried it actually for a while. At first it was up on a stand and he was singing with his hands on his sides. You know, that didn't really do it. So I actually put it at an angle so that he could shout into it onto the floor. That was better, but it wasn't until we just gave him a handheld and said, okay, here you go. And so he could sing like this, right? And get the power. And there was something about him, his gut being compressed when he sang into the floor that actually gave him the energy to give us those performances. And also there was a lot of tension around his performances in that I knew what he could do as far as vocally, you know, when he hit some of these long notes and these kind of screaming long notes. And he wasn't getting it, you know, so I had him drop the mic and run around the block, you know, and it pissed him off like nothing. And but then he came in and he just was like, raw! And I was like, yes, thank you very much. So, you know, you have to also be able to manipulate somewhat your artist to get what you want, and that may not be making them comfortable. You have to make them uncomfortable in order to get that performance too. Anyway, it was a great experience working with those guys. They're super talented.
Any other questions? We'll take one more maybe. Depends on the length of the question. Whoever you want to give it to, you're in charge.
I got the mic. My name's King Dylan. I'm an artist, producer. My question is, where do you draw the line for songwriting as a producer with having so much creative input? Because I know that being a producer is like, oh, well, I added these notes and I added this idea. Where do you guys find that line of, I definitely have some songwriting input on this? And this question's for anyone, so.
Yeah, I feel until the song's there, you know, I don't really look at it like how much songwriting am I going to put into a song. I mean, if the song doesn't need to be changed, or if the chorus is hitting properly, or if the structure's good, I mean, we're not going to touch it, you know, for the sake of changing it, for credit, you know what I mean? And some people might want to do that, but again, it's just, if the song is good, great. If not, if we feel like we need to rewrite some of the parts, then that's just what has to happen. And you just have to be honest and trust the people that you're working with, that they know what they're talking about, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think if you make a discussion of it and you justify it and explain why, if the artist is open to it, you know, ultimately we all have one common goal with an artist and their team, and that is to make something awesome that they can use to further their career and allow it to reach people. So everybody is working in the best interest of the greater good, you know, and doing the best that we can. And I find that you don't really run into issues with that. It's usually, you know, a newer artist that is super, super attached and clingy to their stuff that you might butt heads with in that situation. But you realize that music it's most magical when it is collaborative, you know, and people come together to make amazing things. So, yeah, I mean, it happens a lot. It happens more often than not. But I agree, don't touch it if it's not broken.
Okay, we're gonna get to the rap sign. You give me a rap? Check it, please. Anyway, how about just a couple of you, advice for new producers or people who want to be producers or how to be better producers? Just a couple of comments, then we gotta go because then I'm gonna give you shit. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, honestly, at the end of the day, one big piece of advice is it's not a race, it's a marathon. Don't judge other people by their success, focus on your own. I feel like that was a big problem that's going on right now with social media. People are seeing people who look successful and they want to get there as quick as possible. It's not an overnight thing. Everybody on this panel has been doing it for a long time, and they can tell you it's a long road, it's a marathon, and if you think you're going to get success overnight, it's not going to happen, and if it does, it's not going to last. So get out there, connect with people. If you're a new artist or a producer, you know, add me on Instagram, send me a DM, I'll give you a free hour. If you want to chat, I can help you, guide you, you know, ball's in your court for that. But reach out to people, reach out to get a mentor. Mentors are super important, you know, and just keep working, keep hustling, and don't, you know, just have a common goal and go for it.
Yeah, anybody else?
Just keep learning because everything is constantly evolving and being open to everything is super integral. Like, yeah, I have a way of doing things, but I try to work with as many people as possible because I'm constantly inspired. I learn how to do something new. You know, you pick up little things along the way as a songwriter, as a producer, as a mixer too. You know, like I talk to Brian, I'm like, what are you using right now? You know, and we're constantly talking about that stuff. And I think that allows you to stay current and it keeps you creative to try and integrate new things, you know, into everything that you're doing. So keep learning.
Yeah, completely agree with all that. I'd add on and say jump off a cliff and try doing something that no one's done. And also, at the end of the day, go with your gut. Are you getting that feeling from the song? If you're not, fix it. Go work until you have that feeling, because then other people are going to feel that too.
Great, Sylvia.
You know, it's the best freaking job in the world, so go for it.
I like your short answers too.
Yeah, it's like it takes a while to get there, but just keep at it and don't be discouraged.
Mr. Brian?
I'd say something that's driven me throughout 20 years of doing this is never have a plan B. Always stay focused on your plan A.
Right on.
And
Right
just
on to
run
that.
with it.
Right on to that. Right on to that.
Check out Our Lady Peace and the new Tea Party. Say, go ahead, Jermaine.
They said everything I would say, but I think, yeah, I mean, you know, repeat what they said. I think it's really important, like I said, to listen and try to grab as much information as possible. You know, I think one of the things you asked me before we came in here about mentor, I didn't have a mentor. I was mentored by people that didn't know they was mentoring me. You know,
Great point.
And I think that's what you know, if you don't find a mentor, you're not lucky enough to get somebody to speak to you, find somebody that you really, really, really like, admire, trust, whatever it is, but you don't have to actually speak to that person. You just gotta listen and watch and pay attention to what they do and pay attention to their mistakes and pay attention to the things they do right and make sure that you use that in your journey.
All right, that's all the time we got. Put your hands together for this guy.